So we just inaugurated President Obama. Republicans are not wasting any time in trying to rig the 2016 election. What's going on here, I don't know if you've heard about this. It's been covered a little bit in some mainstream media. The RNC chair, Reince Priebus, is encouraging Republicans who control the government in Democratic-leaning states, so for example, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, to overhaul their electoral system and get rid of the winner-take-all distribution of electoral votes. And they're proposing one of two systems. One system would be you distribute electoral votes proportionally, right? So if the Democratic candidate wins 53% of the vote in Pennsylvania, 53% of the electoral votes go to the Democratic candidate. Big help to Republicans.
Oh, yeah.
The other option, which would be an even more significant help to Republicans, is you distribute them by congressional district with the two at-large votes going to the popular vote winner. So remember, we have gerrymandering, which already makes it that a Democratic candidate could win 53% of the vote, but only get 45% of the congressional districts, for example.
Now, the funny thing is that if every single state did this, the Democrats would win every time.
Well, if you turn this into a different situation, if we basically went into an actual popular vote situation,
right,
fine. We're changing the situation that the popular vote is not determined by gerrymandering. But this is, and it's popular. At least some of these bills in Pennsylvania, House Bill 94 is offering up the second plan I mentioned, which could lead to Democrat wins 53% of the vote, gets only 45% of the electoral votes. You win the popular vote in the state. Instead of getting all the electoral votes, instead of getting 53% of the electoral votes, you get less than half. This is potentially the biggest political story of the next 4 years. This Natan would be an absolute disaster. It would be taking the disaster that gerrymandering already is and exploding it into a disaster. I don't know how else to describe it.
Exactly. I think you would have a significant political and possibly civilian backlash in those states if it was attempted. But the problem is that we have 5 justices on the Supreme Court that have upheld political gerrymandering. So, and they say that that's perfectly constitutional. So
there's nothing illegal about this.
At least not according to those 5. If we get a different makeup on the Supreme Court, it will be. And hopefully by that point, they'll be able to eliminate normal gerrymandering.
For a second there, Lewis, after the election in November, it really seemed like the Republican Party was going to consider broadening their base, changing their policies to not be so off-putting to minorities, to women, to LGBT individuals. It really seemed like a few key people in the Republican Party realized that the way forward does not involve the Tea Party, and it doesn't involve people like Allen West and completely retrograde social policy. And then it looks like they said, that's too much work. Let's just take what we did with gerrymandering and take it even further so we can win. We could potentially win the 2016 election with only 45% of the popular vote.
I like seeing this effort because we've talked a lot about the decline of the GOP. And I think this reinforces our observations because this looks to me like an act of desperation.
It certainly is an act of desperation, but it's not also that. It's also, wait a second, we could pretend to not have policies that completely are negative for all these groups of people, or we could just stick to what we want to do and being really hateful, but just create a voting system that will help us, right?
They'd rather cheat than put aside their archaic ideals.
No, that's what this really shows.
Yeah,
absolutely.